mystical, so unpredictable, here on SNL Stats.
Yes, hello everybody. SNL Stats is back for another weekly roundtable discussing the Carey Mulligan and Kid Cudi episode, and I am so excited to discuss it. We have had such great shows the last few weeks. Last week, we spoke to Gary Kroger about the Daniel Kaluuya episode. Just this past Saturday night, we went live after the show. We did a live show where we did our hot takes about everything about this Carey Mulligan episode. But now, with some perspective, we get to break everything down, and I'm so excited to do this with this amazing panel we have with us. First, joining us as the digital news director and SNL writer for Entertainment Weekly, Jillian Sederholm. Jillian, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Good to be here on one of my favorite podcast theme songs.
Oh, thank you. That's so nice. And I know you're so well versed in the podcast universe, so I consider that very high praise. I appreciate it. Jillian, how are you? It's been a while since we've heard from you. I think it was since the Dan Levy episode.
Everything's been great. We've been plugging along, covering the show, and I'm, as much as I love it, I'm getting kind of excited to have a break. But yeah, everything's good.
Okay, well, that's really great. And personally, everything else is okay with you?
Yep, life is good.
Good. Very glad to hear it.
We're just in a national pandemic, but
Well, I always like to check in. Yes. People like to get to know you, so I think it's great that everything's going well.
Here's your half-vaxxed guest.
Okay, all right. So great. Also joining us, you hear him regularly on our Superfan takeovers and on a bunch of our roundtables throughout the season. It is Bill Kenney. Bill, how are you?
Hey, John. Good to be back again. Nice to see everyone.
Yeah, nice to see you. Everything going well with you?
Yeah, and I join you as the fully vaccinated guest. So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, every week we do our vaccine checkups with all of our guests. So.
Starting to inch back out into the world, so it's nice.
Yeah, that's really great. I don't know how what stage of the vaccination process this guy is in, but I knew when I heard him on the trivia nights that I had to have this guy on the podcast. He was so great, and really all the people we had there were wonderful. But I wanted to get him on one of our shows. Thomas Sena, how are you?
Doing very well, and as a listener, it's quite the honor to be invited. And just for the record, I'm a half-vax over here, so Jillian and I are in the same company.
That's great to hear, Thomas. I can't wait to get into the episode and hear all your thoughts. But before we do, since this is your first time officially kind of being on an episode where you get to talk all about the show, tell me a little bit about your experience with SNL. What's your SNL origin story?
So back in probably the early 90s, I think I was a weird little 10-year-old who just loved watching Saturday Night Live. Part of my little 10-year-old brain understood sketch comedy and kind of what I liked about it to a certain extent. So I've tried not to miss many episodes since about 91 or 92 or so. Caught up on previous episodes, the old original cast on like Comedy Central and VH1. But I've just always loved sketch comedy, and especially the live element. That's what separates SNL from things that it kind of unfairly gets compared to, like Chappelle Show and Key and Peele. SNL's its own thing because of the live element, and I think people kind of dismiss that sometimes, but that's what's always intrigued me about SNL specifically, is that excitement of it just being live and that energy and everything. So about running on 30 years now that I've been a big fan.
No, it's so great. And I'm so with you. I love it when people talk about the live aspect of the show. It's what makes it so great and so amazing that we get to cover. Jillian, let me jump over to you. I'm excited to hear your thoughts. We are now through 17 episodes, headed towards the final 3 of the season. And I want to get your thoughts on where your head is at about season 46 right now. Are you feeling good going into the final stretch of the season?
I really am. I've been invigorated by this season. I thought it was really fun to have so many first-time hosts. That's been really exciting to see. I think that with the quarantine episodes and just the way that they had to scale back a little bit on the amount of guest stars, I think has been refreshing to not just be overwhelmed with alumni. Like when they had the episode with Maya so close to the Emmys, and we knew that SNL cast members would be around, Tina Fey in the building, I was like, oh God, are we going to just have like a parade of guest stars? That's exciting, but then we're just not going to see anything new. We have such a big cast. And I really liked the way that they pulled that off. They did one sketch together, and then we moved on.
Yeah. No, that's a really cool point, because I think that was a worry for everybody, was like, are we holding back on all the cameos only to get them all as we head towards the end of the season? And it seems like we're getting like 2 or 3 or one or 2 in a given evening. And that's okay. Like that's fun. It's really just like friends of the show, and they pop in for interesting things. So I think that's really great. Let me go over to Bill. Bill, it's always great to hear your thoughts on where you are in the season and how you're feeling about everything, considering how much of a historian you are. Bill, how are you feeling about everything right now after 17 episodes?
Feeling pretty good. The last 3 have been a little bit of a roller coaster. I felt like Maya's episode was a little bit underwhelming. Kaluuya's just killed it. Everything about that episode was great. And then we came a little bit down this week. The great stuff was really great, but there was a couple of real stinkers in there that we're going to get to, I'm sure. But overall, in the season, I think that we have done a really good job, as Jillian alluded to. And I mean, when we look back on this season in a few years, or even in 10 years, I think it's going to be amazing what they were able to pull off in a major pandemic. Just that in and of itself, even if it doesn't end up being, one of the greatest seasons of all time, I think that's going to give it a little bit of cred just from that.
For sure. We'll do a lot of retrospective things and coverage, as we get towards the end of the season. So I think that's really important to talk about what we saw. When we came into this thing in September, we didn't know what we were going to get in terms of SNL. So it's really cool that we've gotten so much what feels like regular SNL throughout the entire year. Thomas, let me come to you. We haven't heard your thoughts about season 46 yet. How have you felt about this season overall and where we are in it?
I think with season 46, it's been sort of like a demarcation to me. There's been distinct halves to me, starting with, I think it was the Krasinski who hosted in January. And I think you could feel the Trump weight, I think, kind of being lifted from the show. There wasn't that obligation to include him or what was going on with that administration into the shows. To me, the episodes since from Krasinski on have been very fun and silly. I can kind of tell that the cast members had just been really having a lot of fun. There's been just a really silly, fun energy for the most part in that building, it seems like, and it's kind of, you can kind of see it on the live shows. So to me, from like Krasinski onward, I think the whole vibe's just been what I tend to really love about SNL, is just kind of just silly, goofy. I'm kind of what Bill said is somewhat of the opposite for me. I think it's kind of ramped up for me. I wasn't too keen on the Maya Rudolph episode, enjoyed the Daniel Kaluuya episode, and I think it got a little bit better for me actually this week. So we're heading the last 3 or so episodes into the season, and for me, it's heading into a real positive trend here.
That's really great, because I love it when we have a panel where somebody is like, this episode was okay, and then someone's like, no, this was the best one of the last 3. Like, that's the best thing to hear. Jillian, when you heard that Carey Mulligan was going to be hosting, were you excited to see her? What was your familiarity with her prior to the episode?
I'm familiar with her as a dramatic actress, and so for that reason, I was actually pretty excited that I saw her as I don't want to sound rude, but like a blank slate, that I think that she would just come in, know her lines, do a good job, and be professional about it as a host, not be one of these hosts that are overly serious or needing to rely on cue cards too much. So I thought she would do a serviceable job. And because she's sort of known for things, but even like her big roles, like Promising Young Woman, I didn't really see them doing a take on that. It's not a huge movie. So I was excited that it would give the writers an opportunity to kind of throw whatever at her, which I think we also saw with the Daniel Kaluuya episode. Like, whenever there's an actor that they know has just acting chops, I think they're more willing to throw more at them. So with Carey, I thought she pulled that off. I just didn't think she was quite as playful as like a Dan Levy or a Daniel Kaluuya, who just kind of seemed like they were having more fun. I thought she just was there to like do her job and make sure she got it done, and she did. But I wish that we had seen a little more of her personality wise.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to get into it. We're going to talk about these sketches and how we feel that she did in them. But Bill, I mean, I was, when she came out for the monologue and she was like, I hear that I'm the first British person to ever host this show. Like, it kind of made all the viewers think for a second, like, oh yeah, there has been a lot of British people that have hosted, especially recently. So yeah. And like, obviously this episode, we're going to talk about it, but it was very similar to an episode last season, like verbatim, like some of these sketches. So to separate Carey Mulligan in our minds after this show, I wonder, like, as time goes by, we're gonna maybe, I don't know if her as a host is a little bit forgettable. Are you with me on that?
Absolutely. That was the first thing I thought. And she was perfectly charming. And every one of the sketches she was in, she did a great job. But she kind of faded into the background, where we saw with the Regina King episode and some other hosts this year, they kind of took it on themselves and took over the roles and took over the sketches. And whether that's on the writing or her style, I'm not sure. But she just kind of, oh, was she in that sketch? Yeah. Like when you sent out the list and said she was in 9 sketches, I'm like, wow, that's kind of crazy. I don't remember half of the ones she was in. So yeah, I think that's going to be one of the things from this episode that kind of sticks out, that she didn't stick out.
Yeah. Thomas, are you with Bill on that, or because you really felt like this was a top tier episode that you disagree?
I thought it was a close to a top tier episode, but not because of the host. So I'm actually with Bill on that. I think Carey Mulligan did kind of blend into the background, but I don't necessarily mind that as a host. Sometimes a host that needs to be front and center can derail a show and kind of derail what happens that week. So I actually didn't mind that she was just sort of willing to blend in and play along and just kind of let the material speak for itself. And it's kind of interesting that the sketch that I thought that she was the best in was probably my least favorite sketch of the night. We might get into that, but it is kind of weird. A sketch where she was really like showing her acting chops and everything was one that didn't quite hit with me. But I totally agree. But it's something that I don't mind.
Oh, such a tease! I can't wait to hear about this one. So we're gonna come back to you for that. So that look, I felt the same as you guys. I really wasn't sure what to expect. I do feel like this episode was a good episode of SNL. Like, this is a fun episode if you put it on. There's some interesting things in here. Some sketches were pretty good. Would I say it's probably forgettable compared to some other episodes this season? Certainly. But the reasons I found it good were not Carey Mulligan reasons, though she seems very nice and lovely. So I'm glad that she got the opportunity to do this. Let's, talk about the start of this episode, how, the show opened up. Obviously, there's a lot of things happening over in Minnesota. So, our thoughts are with everybody over there and everything that's happening. But, this Minnesota news sketch that we get to open the show, Jillian, what did you think about it? Because we've seen something like this before last year, and I was surprised they brought it back.
Yeah, I liked it. I liked that it wasn't the premise that I immediately thought they were going for, that the 2 white anchors thought that he was innocent or were going to take like an all lives matter approach. So I like that twist. It kind of reminded me of the Tom Hanks Black Jeopardy in that regard, of kind of like what they all had in common and then what they had different. So I thought it was a smart take. I was not familiar at all at that point with the Paul Pierce story. So I guess this was a good way for me to then immediately Google what are they talking about, so I would know when it came up again later.
Yeah, this is crazy because I'm like a sports fan myself, but I don't know. I'm really curious, and I guess we can ask the listeners one day what percentage of the SNL audience is also like tapped in to like, this is a deep cut. Like, this isn't a major sports news. This is a a former all-star, probably Hall of Fame NBA player who gets fired at ESPN. This is a very niche story. So I did see like a lot of the discussion around this was like, what the hell is SNL talking about with this? So I'm glad that they at least explained a little bit of it. Let's talk about the cold open, Bill. What'd you think of it?
Well, to go with what you're saying as far as the Paul Pierce part, yeah, absolutely. And I'm a big sports fan as well. And I knew of the story because of watching ESPN and but I didn't feel like it was just one of those front burner stories. So the fact that they doubled down on it, as we'll talk about later, like, it was kind of crazy to me that, they kind of just threw it into the cold open. And then, later on we saw more of that. But overall, the cold open was probably my favorite in the last 5 years, I will say.
Oh, okay. Well, we're going to talk about that. But I was going to say, like, this is the type of thing that when you see stories like this end up pervasing the show a little bit, it makes you feel like it's a slow news week, and SNL should be great regardless of whether there's nothing in the news. They should be able to find things. So they dug really deep for this one. But you said favorite cold open in the last 5 years. That's a crazy hot take. So explain why.
Okay, well, I mean, it's also a very low bar when you think about what we had to deal with until January as far as cold opens. I mean, every week was more of Trump win and everything that went along with that. I felt like this was such a refreshing, even though we had seen this once before, as you said, this was such a nice take with, I mean, Keenan and Ego played the I can't believe these white people so well. Like, and it wasn't like, it was more the naivete of these white people as opposed to they're racist. And then, I mean, Chris Redd just started his night off. I think his best night of the year, and he's had a great year with his role as Calvin. I mean, Calvin the Weatherman was perfect to me. Cutting over to him, talking about Paul Pierce, and then later on going back to him and talking about May cold, June cold, July for some reason cold as or hot as hell. But yeah, I mean, right from all the way through it and all the way through the Prince jokes, I think it was from start to finish just perfect.
Yeah, I think my favorite stuff was the okay, Craig Jorgensen, like that stuff really got me. Thomas, what do you think about this cold open? Since you love the show, are you with Bill on this one?
Yeah, I am with Bill, and maybe not to the extent that it was the best, but I wouldn't be surprised if I had watched every episode over the last few years, and I did think this was the best. I think this was a wonderful cold open. I'm a big NBA fan. That's following the NBA is one of my favorite things to do in the world. So of course I was in tune to the Paul Pierce thing, but as a huge sports fan, sometimes when SNL covers kind of sports things that may or may not be niche, I always wonder how it comes across to just kind of a general audience. Like when Keenan plays LeVar Ball or something like that, I wonder how just the average person receives that. So the Paul Pierce stuff was kind of interesting, and they kind of doubled down on it, like was said too. But I love just in general when SNL tackles this political stuff, but not in a way where they parrot what somebody said. So when they would do Trump cold opens, they would oftentimes just do word for word things that Trump said. With things like this, it seems like there's more creativity involved. They actually have a perspective. They're finding their voice more. Their SNL is really great at sort of calling out the well-meaning white liberals that kind of missed the mark on their being allies and things like that. They've done that quite a bit over the last few weeks, and I think they really hit the mark with this one. And it was a really good length. It didn't overstay its welcome. I think it was a really tight few minutes, and then all of a sudden, live from New York, it's Saturday night, and the show starts. I think it was a textbook, like really great cold open.
Yeah, our friend James, who he's like so on the ball with the timings of all these sketches, he told me that, during the show that the cold open was 40 seconds under what it was supposed to be. And that is a great sign for any cold open, is that you can get into the show and you have extra time. You're not going to lose sketches later on in the night. And I think that is what is awesome about this one. Jillian, before we move forward, I do want to ask you, because, these guys are coming out swinging, saying best cold open in 5 years. Are you with them on this at all?
I really enjoyed it. I would have to really think back at other ones, but just off the cuff, I don't think I would put it like in my top 5. But I really enjoyed it. I did really like it.
Yeah, I'm still processing this because I didn't think you were going to come out with that, Bill. But I think
statement.
Yeah, it's a very bold statement. I love it, and I think that this was probably one of the better ones we've seen in the last few years. I think there was something, and I'm still trying to figure out how to verbalize it. So, listeners, I apologize if this doesn't make too much sense. But what I'm trying to say is that the Britney Spears cold open, the first one, the Reggae Jean one, there was something about that even though it was like one person comes out, says the latest news story, second person comes out, says the latest news story, even though that is a format that SNL uses for cold opens that I don't always love, there was something about it that was extremely high energy that made me get really excited for the show, that I think if I was going to evaluate this cold open, which I prefer in concept, I think this was just missing that extra boost of energy to make the show feel a little bit more like a party. And I think if they had that, and I don't know what that is, but if they had that, then I could probably look at this cold open and say, hey, we got 10 out of 10 over here. But I think because of they didn't, that's where my head's at on it, where I think it was lacking slightly.
Well, and I think part of what I mean, I liked it for itself, but I also really enjoyed the fact that they did not go into the easy jokes of Matt Gaetz. They very easily could have opened up with, just the easy pinata of all the jokes they could have made about him. And while they did get their digs in later, and I appreciate that, the fact that they didn't go for the easy joke and they made it into a full sketch about different topics, I think really hit home with me.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's get into the episode. Let's talk about the things that we want to talk about from the Carey Mulligan episode. Thomas, you teased us before. You said that there was a sketch that you thought was your favorite sketch of the night, or am I getting this right? That it was your favorite sketch, but Carey wasn't so good in it, or it was Carey's best performance and it was it was one of those. So what was it?
Well, it was Carey's best performance, I thought, but it was my least favorite sketch of the night.
I mixed the two up.
Yeah. It was actually the second sketch of the night, the IBS medicine ad, the Tremfalta, and I guess it's just because I've never been too into toilet humor. With a few exceptions, it has to be done just for my sensibilities. It has to be done with just perfect timing and kind of just right. But that one kind of did miss the mark for me. It seemed like it would have been a post-weekend update kind of pre-tape. But Carey was actually really great in this. She acted her butt off. The way she kind of whispered deviously,
no pun intended,
Lauren
right?
Holtz, right? Exactly. The way she deviously kind of whispered into Lauren Holtz's ear at the end, just the looks on her face, like that was like an Academy Award winning performance right there for Carey. But the actual subject matter kind of had me maybe wanting a little more, or not wanting it at all, maybe. And there were some elements that I did find funny about it, and this was such a good episode that it being my least favorite of the night isn't a horrible thing. I didn't want to change the channel or throw the remote at the TV or anything like that. But I just thought that was interesting that I was really kind of blown away by Carey's performance, but the material itself didn't really do it for me.
Yeah, Jillian, I think, you mentioned that, Carey Mulligan from being more of a dramatic actress, and I think we saw this in display in this particular pre-tape. Did you like this one?
I'm pretty much with Thomas. I'm also not a toilet humor person. I don't know if I would say it was my least favorite, but I was like, oh, okay. I can see the funny in this. I'm glad that they didn't lean even further into anything gross about it. But it wasn't my favorite.
Yeah. Bill, what about you?
Yeah, I'm with both of them. I mean, the only funny part to me, Carey killed it, but I think Keenan and 80's reactions were pretty good. But yeah, this was pretty low on the list for the night for me as well. Felt like they dusted this off from 1995 and put it into the episode. So yeah, it did not work
that year in particular.
Yes, that exact year.
Yeah, that's very funny. I do think that this was a night of almost like a lot of 80, a lot of Mikey. That was what we were talking about on Saturday night after the show, and I did feel like this was probably my favorite 80 throughout the night. I think she was perfectly cast for this particular role. Thomas, let me send it back over to you. So I did ask you about the one that was the one you least liked. Tell me another one that you definitely want to talk about.
I would love to talk about the lesbian period drama one as well. That really it was kind of a post weekend update pre-tape, and I just love when this is one of my sweet spots, is when SNL picks on movie or TV tropes just so perfectly. It kind of reminded me of a few years ago when they had the Wes Anderson, and if you remember that, it has a kind of a long name for the sketch, but it was just a perfectly done parody of a Wes Anderson trailer. And whenever SNL can hit into those tropes that movie and TV shows kind of do, it has me. And this one in particular, I actually, full disclosure, I was a fan. I did enjoy Portrait of a Lady on Fire. thought it was a good movie, but it did have a lot of these kind of tropes that SNL was picking on. So all the beats of this sketch, I was comparing to the beats of that movie, and I think they just pretty much knocked it out of the park with everything that they were saying, from like the Academy Award-winning glance choreography to the world's saddest flirting, and there's a drawing scene. Like, there was just rapid-fire jokes, and the aesthetic was perfect, and that's just one that was near the top of my list that I really enjoyed.
Jillian, what were your thoughts on it? Because I thought all the pre-tapes were so different from each other all night that it was the comparisons between them were really interesting to analyze.
Yeah, I enjoyed that we got different styles of pre-tape, but I would say the lesbian period piece was probably my sketch of the night. I'm always kind of hit or miss on the movie satires. Sometimes they just come off more of a bit you would see like at the Indie Spirit Awards or something. So when it first started, I was like, ooh, I don't know. And then it had just such great quotes. And I thought that Kate's character being involved in there, and then can I sketch both of you? I just really got a kick out of, and just mocking the sexual gratuity, and that, you know, obviously this was directed by a man, and the wind, and just so many great little one-liners in there too.
One of the quotes that I wrote down was, "It's 1840. I don't think that's been invented yet."
Yes.
Two
so great actresses who dare not wear makeup. It was great.
And I also want to just point out that line that I think it started off, you know, like probably a few seconds in, but it was really just Heidi saying, you know, I'm your female companion. And it was just the line, like the way she says that, because Heidi, we always talk about her on Weekend Update getting so deep into character that people love her Weekend Update pieces. And to have her do this in a pre-tape, I would love to see her do this more in live sketches, but to have her do this in a pre-tape, I think she was really well cast in this and did a great job in it. Bill, what were your thoughts on it?
One of my favorites for the night as well. And as you mentioned, I mean, Heidi is so ranged as an actress, which is why she's probably my favorite cast member at this point. I mean, this is so different from what we've seen her do in other sketches. You know, she's playing a teenager, she's playing a YouTube star. So to see her just kind of throw herself into this, you know, very morose lesbian in the 1800s and really play it for the laughs. I mean, it was great. My other favorite line was 12 lines of dialogue in a 2.5-hour runtime. So that's exactly what those kind of movies are like. So I think that was really good on all sides.
Yeah, and I know that some of our listeners were asking for who did the narration on this. I don't have the 100% concrete answer, but the working theory that the SNL community is going with is that the voiceover was Carey Mulligan doing an American accent. So that's the theory that we're going with. Okay. So I don't know if I find out something different. Of course, I'll post that on social media, but that's the working theory right now. Jillian, can you tell me one sketch that you would like to talk about?
Well, let's talk about the third pre-tape, so we can just get them all in there. Let's talk about the weird little flute. So I'm not a huge rap music aficionado, so I was like, oh, I know Lizzo plays a flute, and I know I didn't really know that this was a huge trend, but I was completely on board with the premise of it. I loved that Timmy Chalamet showed up. He's now a friend of the show, from first time host, a friend of the show. I loved seeing him in there. And I've loved the, I don't know if you've seen, Lizzo her flute has its own official verified Instagram account. And it's been tweeting about how sad she was to be left out. And then held a mini press conference talking about it. So that was like a whole other day after sketch, enjoying that.
Yeah, I noticed. I think I saw that actually on your Twitter, Jillian, about that. You tweeting about the Lizzo stuff. So definitely weird not to include it. I do want to mention, I knew this sketch was going to come up. I do want to mention that there's been a lot of talk about different news publications not mentioning Chris Redd being in rap pre-tapes. And like, you know, this is the type of thing that like, I have to say, we're an SNL podcast. We're going to talk about it. Like, totally not cool. Like, this guy clearly is just as much a part of, you know, as anything else. I don't know why. And Jillian, I don't know if you mind commenting on this because you come from a news publication in the first place, but I don't know if it's the type of thing that people feel that they're going to sell headlines more if they don't put certain people into the names of the news articles. But I just think this is so wrong. And like in 2021, like, why are we doing this?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I can speak to that, and that's exactly the reason why that you have sites that tell you like who gets searched for the most when you put them in a headline on Google. So what's more likely to hit, or who's trending higher on social media. So sometimes when you're coming up with, you only have so much space and you have to cram in a couple of names, and you have a Pete Davidson who's in the news all the time, or a Timothy Chalamet who's guest starring in there. When I saw those, I was like, as an SNL fan and a Chris Redd fan, I was like, yeah, I'm also outraged. As a journalist that has to make these kind of headline decisions all day long, I was like, ooh, I'm not going to say anything about this because we probably have done something similar and slighted someone else. So that's a bummer. I think on Twitter, you do have a lot more space, though. I think that, maybe their tweet, they could have fit a couple more names in there because, yeah, I think it really is a bummer that he's not getting his due because he's consistently great.
Yeah, and we're not singling anyone in particular out, but what I would say is just look, if you guys don't mention this, and then it's going to cause some type of outrage, and then we're going to talk about it, and it only creates some type of like negative PR that comes back around on you. So just like be smarter, people. So figure out a way to do this. I know there's a balance, but I appreciate you commenting on that, Jillian. It's very nice of you. Thank you. Bill, let me hear your thoughts. Let's turn back to the pre-tape. What'd you think about Weird Little Flute?
Well, and one more thing about Chris Redd, his comments on Twitter were fantastic. He took a nice approach to it, and even made a couple jokes about if he tweeted out a picture of his, that somebody else would get credit for it. So I think to have a little bit of humor in the fact that he wasn't getting mentioned in various articles was a nice take for him, and gave him the high road. But as far as the sketch itself, the pre-tape, I think it was fantastic. It was definitely my 10-year-old daughter's favorite of the night. We both were singing it all day. What can you say about these pre-tapes? I mean, the saddest thing if Pete leaves will be that he's not working with Chris on these great hip hop pre-tapes anymore. And seeing Kid Cudi in this different light, I think that really was fantastic. He did such a great job. He brought such great energy to this as well. So yeah, this is up there for me for the night.
Yeah, and Thomas, I know that a lot of people were saying afterwards that this felt like a little bit like a Lonely Island short. So I don't know. I kind of felt that as well. And I don't know what it was about it. I'm still trying to figure it out. But when I was watching it, I think it was just the taking something so specific and then making it so enlarged is like a trope of the Lonely Island. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, I could see that. It was almost like a Lonely Island was good at doing non sequitur kind of videos. It kind of reminded me of the Michael Bolton Pirates of the Caribbean pre-tape that Lonely Island did, because it really, you initially going like, what, this doesn't even make sense. I don't understand the reference, and that's how I felt with this one. I know Jillian said that she was on board immediately, and I wasn't. Actually, this one had to win me over because at first I was sitting there saying, "Is this a thing?" Like I just kind of was trying to rack my brain, like, is this a thing in hip hop? I feel like an old man. I'm at the loop. Do they use flutes in hip hop? But as the pre-tape progressed, and we found out all the weird little funny things that they would do with the flute. And it turns out that they were just in that music store. It actually did a good job of winning me over by the end. So, I mean, props to Chris Redd and Pete Davidson and everybody involved in that. They got somebody who was skeptical to actually kind of nod my head at the end and say, you know what, I actually enjoyed that. And then it got better the second time I watched it as well.
I just want to know who Stephanie Giannopoulos is. Like, can somebody tell me who that girl is? Because she should be a recurring character. I thought she was great in this.
I Googled her immediately, and she's nowhere to be found except for this sketch. So I don't know. Maybe they pulled her out of nowhere, but she was fantastic.
Yeah, she might be like a friend or a family member of somebody at the show. I would love to know who this person is. I know that a lot of our listeners, or some of our listeners, are actually in bands, and they did say that there was a lot of like inside flute humor here. So that one time at band camp, they would probably understand a lot better than anyone who is not in that. But for those who really enjoyed it, I thought this was an excellent pre-tape. All right, so Bill, let's head over to you. Tell me one sketch that you want to talk about.
Well, one of my favorites of the night, which I'm not usually one that loves the recurring sketches, but something about What's Wrong with This Picture just always scratches me where I itch. It's just every line in this sketch was perfect. Talking about the half vaccinated Keenan, and Chris Redd again steals this sketch right from Jump Street. Talking about I'm fine. Does it seem like something's wrong? And then talking about the picture, there's no dogs in it, and I love dogs. Like this, but everybody had something to do in this, and everybody was funny. Carey and Adie and Keenan and Chris all did a fantastic job. The doctor picture was the best as far as all the great lines. He wants to pick up the hitchhiker, but her car's a bed. So it's just, I don't know. It's simple humor, but it really won me over.
I do wonder if having it at the beginning of the night was maybe not the right place for it. Maybe it's like so silly that it belongs somewhere near the end when you're like a little bit more delirious, and then the jokes are even funnier. But Bill, the line, look at the doctor's clock. His robe is covering it. Like, that is just such gold. I thought that was great. Jillian, what were your thoughts on this sketch?
Yeah, no, I loved it. I thought there were so many good one-liners. I wish that we could get outtakes from the writer's room. I'm just imagining them all just, sitting together, throwing out their craziest lines about each photo. I really got a kick out of it. And I thought that this was a great, when you don't have specific things to write for a host, this is a great sketch to pull out.
Thomas, what were your thoughts?
I love the sketches that just have rapid fire, quick one-liner jokes. And so this really did kind of scratch that sweet spot that I have, that comedy sweet spot. And I realized that I missed an opportunity at the beginning of the podcast when you asked me, how are you doing? I should have said, not much. Because that line by Chris Redd just totally won me over instantly. And you know what? As far as Chris Redd goes, I've never been a huge Chris Redd fan. Sometimes he seemed a little one note for me with kind of the crazy eyes and the inflection that he puts on, but he just killed it in this sketch. Like, he really stood out to me. So I got to give Chris Redd big props again for stealing this sketch. Bill was absolutely right. He was awesome. And I got a lot of Celebrity Jeopardy vibes from this one too, which is just that, that those sketches mean a lot to me. Like when Keenan, frustrated, he just kind of gave them the answer before one of them, just things like that. Like it fit the silly vibe that I think that the show has gone for lately. Fit that really well.
Yeah, he's like, I'll give you a clue. Look at the half glass of milk.
Exactly.
There was a lot of great stuff here. And your point about Chris is so astute, because I felt like this was, an excellent episode for Chris. For as much as we saw of Mikey and Adie, to me, Chris was definitely my MVP for the night. And that's exactly where I want to go next. I want to start by let's break down Weekend Update. Let's talk about that. We don't always cover Weekend Update every week. There's not always newsworthy stories, but in our SNL community, our tight-knit community, when somebody plays a president or an ex-president on the show, that means a lot. All of a sudden, if Chris Redd left the show, before this episode, people are going to be like, oh yeah, Chris Redd, he was pretty good. He was in some stuff, but forever, Chris Redd will have played Barack Obama on the show. And that's crazy. Like, that's awesome. That's such a big deal for us in the fan community. Jillian, what did you think about this Barack Obama and Bruce Springsteen piece on Update?
I was floored by Chris's Barack Obama. Like, he had that in him this whole time. And I think I really see it as not a Barack Obama impression, but a Barry Obama impression, which is really important distinction of like, this is, the retired president. And I really hope that we get to see it again. I have not heard the Bruce and Barack podcast. So I don't know how close it was to like talking about their kind of misfire of a dynamic, but I thought it was, even without listening to it, I thought it was really funny.
Such random people to put together on a podcast. Like, it's like, let's just take celebrity A and celebrity B and see what happens. And you know what? The fact that we got this on SNL is just totally worth them doing this in the first place. Bill, what did you think about Chris Redd playing Obama and Beck playing Springsteen?
Oh, you're so right. I mean, when Michael Che said Barack Obama, that instant I was like, who is Jay back? Like, what's happening here? And then they show Chris, and it was a complete wow. And you couldn't have found a place for him the last 3 years. I mean, I know everything was all Trump all the time, but my goodness, like this was in his back pocket and he never used it, or he was never asked to use it, I would imagine. But yeah, I mean, it was so great. They had some really good lines. I loved the whole part with Bruce liking Sprite. Yeah, that's a whole episode right there. Like, and I mean, Bruce, I don't know. That was kind of like hyperactive Bruce. I don't even know how to describe it, but he did a pretty good job, but it's not what I would have taken as a Bruce impression. But
it was just so ridiculous that it was one of my favorite things that Beck has done the entire year. Like, it was just so like over the top. And I think that's exactly what you needed, because like Jillian said, we got like the Barry Obama version. So like that contrast between Beck playing this like ridiculous Springsteen, I think worked really great. Thomas, what were your thoughts on it?
Beck's Bruce Springsteen impression was so jarring to me that it was hard for me to kind of break out of that. Like, I really enjoyed Chris Redd, killed it as Barack Obama, and I echo the sentiments. I hope we see more of that from him. Beck, just, I don't know, just the way he looked or his forehead or something, that was just like completely jarring when he got on the screen, and I couldn't take my eyes off of it. So I don't know how to feel right now about Beck's Bruce Springsteen. It definitely will stick with me. But I think that was so astute, saying that Chris Redd played Barry Obama and not Barack Obama, much in the same, like, Dana Carvey played like a weird kind of version of George H.W. Bush. Not necessarily, it wasn't like a one-for-one impression, but he definitely put a spin on it, and it was memorable. And I think Chris did a great job. Like, breakout episode. This episode tells me there's more that Chris Redd has to offer to SNL and to fans and everything. So I hope he sticks around for a while, and we could see that his potential really play itself out.
I think, Thomas, when you just said that, a light bulb lit off in my head, because what we had with the Fred Armisen stuff, Fred played Barack Obama, 36 times. He was the one that was cast for it. And when that originally happened, most people felt like this was no take on Obama. Like, this was just a bad Obama. That was the general consensus with Fred playing Obama. And then when Jay took over, it was like, this is a great Obama. And it's like almost like that. It was too good. It was too good of an impression that people felt it was almost like SNL didn't have a take on him. But now that Chris did this, I know that Obama is not the president, but it's like, oh, now we finally have something. We finally have an SNL cast member having an interesting take on Obama, and it's too late to see it. So as an SNL fan, you start to think about these things about like a big what if Chris was around then to have played Obama.
But there's still, they can still inject Obama into sketches if they want to. So I think there could still be opportunities for them to do that with Chris. And I don't think impressions need to be necessarily spot on. I like it more when they have points of view, and we saw that here.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, so then, to me, what I'm going to remember this episode for is Weekend Update, because of all these really interesting pieces that were on it. And then next up, we get Punky Johnson coming in as Pineapple. And again, we're going to go back to the Paul Pierce stuff, and that's really like the hook to talk about it. But really, this is a conversation about Punky's first time in a starring role. So Jillian, what did you think about seeing Punky put herself out there on Update like this?
I loved it. It was such a different character than we've seen from her. It was really offered her a platform. I don't know if it's just because I was completely unaware of the Paul Pierce thing that I wasn't really that into the humor or the plot of it, I guess, but I just enjoyed her performance and really getting to meet her a little more than we had before.
Definitely. And Bill, one of the conversations we've been having this year is the cast is so bloated that you bring on these 3 new people, and we want to see opportunities to get to know them, because assuming people are going to leave, these people are going to start to grow with the next, big cast of SNL. And we haven't seen much from Punky up until now. So what did you think about this?
I thought it was great. I was on the week that Lauren did her big first update piece as well. And I think that it's great to see what she's able to do. Punky is, out of all the featured players that came on this year, was the one I was most familiar with, because she was on David Spade's Comedy Central show so much. So I wanted to see some of that energy and funniness that she brought to that, and she hasn't had that opportunity too much. So to see her do this crazy stripper. I think, I would have liked to see her stand up as well, but I think this was a good place to start.
Thomas, what did you think of this?
As soon as Punky came on the screen, I wrote in my geeky little notebook, Punky, with a couple of exclamation points, because I was so excited because she hasn't had that feature opportunity. We've seen her in sketches and everything, but she hasn't really been featured just either as herself or a character. So I was paying extra close attention to see how she would do, to see how comfortable she was, to see what her energy level was like. And I think she passed with flying colors. I couldn't have been more impressed with her Weekend Update desk piece debut right there. I think it was solid character work. I'm familiar with some of her stand-up, so I know she could be. She's a really great stand-up. She plays and expresses risque material really well. If you've ever seen her stand up, that's kind of in her wheelhouse. So I think she just showed her personality, and I'm actually looking forward to seeing what she could do more.
Jillian, in your mind, do you have like a clear ranking as to how these three new feature players have done so far this season? And does this change anything for you as to where Punky would fall in that?
I think she remains the one that I want to see more of. And now that really cemented that. I think that Andrew seems like he's just like fit in the most seamlessly. Like they've just used him so often that I'm just used to him now. But I don't know if he's really like made a huge impression character wise. So maybe this does kind of amplify Punky slightly above him, that this really did highlight her feature her as a character. And so now I think I would love to see her lead a sketch as a character. Lauren, I still just don't feel like I know at all, unfortunately. And even though I remember that she did something on Weekend Update, I cannot remember what it was that she did.
I'm with you. It's the same thing. It was very forgettable, and I think that this is probably more memorable. So good for Punky for being able to pull that off. Bill, Thomas, let me ask you guys quickly. Bill, where are your rankings 1, 2, 3 for the new players this year?
Oh, I'd probably do the same. I'd say Andrew, Punky, and Lauren. I mean, Punky slightly above Lauren, even before this, because of being on the Dionne Warwick talk show. But yeah.
Okay, Thomas, what about you?
I would rank them Andrew, Punky, and Lauren. And Andrew number one's just for the mere fact that his line, "It's Guy Piano," will just rumble in my head for probably years to come. I love that sketch, but that one line it just completely endeared me to Andrew.
Yeah, and then Thomas, you said to me, pre-podcast, I said, what's the thing that you want to talk about? And it was this Bowen Yang iceberg character. So let you start this off. What did you love about this?
The first thing that came to mind was that it was a 10-to-1 sketch meets Weekend Update. And that's just completely in my wheelhouse. I love these weird desk pieces that aren't based on anybody in real life, and this one not even based on any sort of person. It was just the iceberg. It made me wonder. I know Anna Dresden was involved in writing this, I think along with Bowen, but it's just, I love those weird things that just make me wonder, how the hell did you come up with that? Where did this idea even start from? And Bowen just completely sold it. In anybody, in a lot of other hands, it could have come across as too weird. Maybe somebody who was less sure of the material wouldn't have played it as well. But I think Bowen was just so confident, and it seemed like he probably developed the point of view of that iceberg within days and just ran with it. I just love Bowen as it is, and I think over the coming years, I think he's really gonna pop. But this just highlighted everything that I love about him, and it was just so weird and out there, but it worked at the same time, and you could tell how excited I am about this sketch. And I text messaged my wife, who's out of town, and specifically said that Bowen Yang played an iceberg on Weekend Update. You should watch this tomorrow. And she's like, "Ooh, I'm intrigued." And that's all I told her. I said, "Just watch it." And it was just fantastic.
It was fantastic. Jillian, like I really found it so amazing the stuff that Bowen has done on Update this season, between his more obviously serious conversation a few weeks ago about the transgressions that have happened in the Asian community. And then you go to something like this, which is more of a comedy piece, obviously, but just his moments where he's gotten to shine by himself on Update as a second-year player are so impactful that I feel like this is altering the trajectory of his potential SNL career, that it's like everything is shooting up right now. How did you feel about this?
Oh yeah, I completely agree. I am such a Bowen fan from his days when he first started as a writer. I think was right around the time that I discovered his podcast, Las Culturistas, and have been just a faithful listener ever since. And so these are just like the things that I knew that Bowen had in him and just wanted him to showcase more on the show. And I love seeing it. He has so much range. It's completely ridiculous concept. I'd like to imagine that Anna was just one of those little girls that was going to see Titanic over and over and over. And, at your like 25th viewing, you're kind of like, okay, I remember Leo's cute, but what else is there? Oh, why are they blaming this iceberg for it was the water's fault? Maybe it just came from there. But it was great. I immediately changed my profile photo on my Slack at work to Bowen as the iceberg. I love it.
Bill, what were your thoughts on it?
Well, I don't think we have to worry about Bowen being typecast as an iceberg, right?
No.
Fantastic. I mean, again, with between him and Ego this year, this will be remembered as the year that these two really broke out of the pack. He has done such a phenomenal job, and I'm a huge fan of his as well. And I'm so happy to see him getting so much work this year. Not every week, but he seems to find at least every other episode or so that he gets into 2 or 3. And what he has, he makes it count. Like he goes 100 on everything. So yeah, there were so many great lines in this as well, talking about 40 or 50 people died, and no, it's actually 1,500. So that was repeated a couple of times. But yeah, it was fantastic.
For me, this was the highlight of the night. I think there was a lot of good here, but just really excellent job by Bowen. So we talked about some of these sketches. Let me ask around the panel if there was anyone, and it doesn't have to be, but if there are other ones that you want to make sure we talk about before we move on. Jillian, was there anything on the rundown that you saw that you're like, oh, I want to make sure we talk about?
I just want to give props to the publicist for Mumford and Sons for really helping shift the dialogue from a couple of weeks ago about one of the band members having to exit the band over some interesting views, to, everyone like, oh yeah, this guy should really be on here. We love him.
Yeah, I don't think that guy is one of the sons taking care of the children that were left at home. Bill, anything else in the rundown that you want to talk about?
I loved the absurdity of the legs sketch. I think how they were able to pull that off, and a lot of this episode felt like a showcase for 80, and I could be proven wrong in the next 3 episodes, but I'd like to see them head in that direction for people who they think are going to leave, give them that obligatory 4 or 5 sketches to really shine and show she was so fantastic in this. all the ridiculous lines, perfect 10-to-1 sketch. It felt like something out of 1988, like it came out of a time machine.
This was so weird. And I was, like I said, we went live on Saturday night, and Bill, you were in the chat, so you saw, and everyone on the panel, when we got to lay eggs, was like, what the hell was that? That was one of the weirdest things that they've done all season. And I said to the audience, I was like, hey, give me a couple of days. We're going to be back on the roundtable. We're going to figure out like what it is about this sketch that worked or didn't. And I still got nothing. Like, I don't know what to say about this sketch. It was just so weird, and weird can be good. So if you're in the mood for it, I think this is a funny sketch to watch, but I think you have to be in the mood for it to enjoy this sketch. Thomas, what did you think about lay eggs?
I think if you say what the hell is that, then that's like a great 10-to-1 sketch in my book. But this is coming from a guy who's possibly my all-time favorite cast member is Will Forte. So that's kind of my point of view. I like the weird stuff. Give me that. And so the fact that people were saying, what the hell is this? To me, that's a 10-to-1 sketch right there. Just let the weirdness wash over you. And I like this sketch. I like the callback to the random 80s, 90s trend. I remember seeing those eggs just kind of like laying around. I'm a sucker for 80 as a middle-aged mom.
Wait, those are real things?
Those are real.
Real.
Oh, John.
Oh, that's totally
really. No, those were all too real. Absolutely, I remember them from my childhood. Just go to the store and see those eggs, and sometimes my mom would get those. But like that was just such a funny random callback.
Is this an American thing? I don't know. I don't know if this is an American.
I'm not sure.
If your grandma or aunt was styling in 1985, she was wearing legs, like for sure.
Okay. I'm going to get to the bottom of this because maybe this explains things a little bit. I did not know that this was a real thing, so this makes sense. I don't think some of the audience did either. This is very funny. Thomas, did I let you finish your point? Was everything okay there?
Yeah, just let the weirdness wash over me and enjoyed another 10-to-1 sketch.
For sure. This was no potato chip, but I get what you're saying about weird 10-to-1 sketches. Jillian, what did you think about lay eggs?
Oh yeah, I agree. It was wonderfully weird. And now I want to know, knowing that they're real, does it make it weirder or less weird?
Definitely weirder. And that's now it makes it more fun if they know that they're a real thing. I just thought they made up some product, and I was like, why? But no, okay. Now I can watch this with fresh eyes. So I think the audience. I'm curious if you are Canadian and you are one of our listeners. Please let me know if you're with me and have never heard of this. So maybe that's the answer to that. Thomas, was there anything else on the rundown that you wanted to talk about before we move on?
Yeah, I just wanted to call out another recurring sketch that I'm actually still not tired of, and a lot of people mentioned it because it was kind of the obligatory. We have an English actress, so let's do this sketch. But it still worked for me. It was the War in Words sketch, and I really just love the simple premise and the quick jokes, and as you could tell, that's part of my wheelhouse, is just like the funny one-line quick jokes. I can imagine them all in the writer's room, just kind of where should we take this? What should they say next and everything. So I actually had a lot of fun with that, and then I enjoyed the payoff, which was the Life magazine. She was the woman from the Life magazine cover, which was a really nice payoff, and it's famously hard to end a sketch, and I actually think they found a pretty good ending for that one.
You would think that the SNL writers, and maybe like we're just too in too deep that we overthink this stuff, but you would think that some people would say, hey, we're doing too much Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Like maybe just tone it down a little bit, because we had 3 sketches that were like pretty much the same sketches in this. Jillian, do you think like they may have thought about this stuff at all?
I don't know. I wonder if it was subconscious. They were like, what do we do with a British actress? And they just randomly thought of the same couple of things. I thought it was okay. I liked the sketch. I did think this might be I would have to rewatch them all. This might have been my favorite iteration of the sketch, though. Something like the photo with the parents, I thought was a really good gag. The cocaine coming back, the Nazi party. I thought it was pretty good. The one thing that bothered me for some reason was that he was writing with a pencil, and then they kept doing a close up of this like letter written in pen, and then I was like, why am I getting so bothered by this? That's ridiculous.
And Carey Mulligan wasn't really even hitting the page necessarily. I know some SNL fans online were bothered by the way Carey Mulligan was writing that.
I did notice that too. Yeah. I definitely noticed that.
We found her one acting weak point.
Yes. Right. Go sharpen your skills, Carey Mulligan.
That's how you know that we are in too deep, is that we're starting to think about whether she was actually putting the pen to paper on this stuff. I did like the line that was like, dinner with the Nazis, details, please. Alarmed in the Atlantic. I thought there was some good stuff in this, even though it was really just a retread of what we've seen before. Bill, anything on this before we move on?
I feel like we've come to this well too many times. I mean, not only has it been on SNL 3 times, but it was on Maya and Marty to start with, of course, with Mikey and Maya. So yeah, it didn't really work for me. The only thing that made me laugh was when she posed with the gravestones of his parents. That was really the only funny part to me.
And again, I said this on Saturday, but SNL, you had a joke in the "What's with this picture?" or "What's," yeah, that's the name of that sketch, where you had the tombstone with the rip thing, with Chris Redd making the rip joke. Just throw it back in. Just a thought.
Right.
We love that stuff. So okay, so that's pretty much what we covered for the episode. Let's talk about the cast. Was there anyone that you would like to point out to you, Jillian, that you really thought we should talk about?
I agree that it's Bowen and Ego's season, like the season that we really saw them rise. And I just get so excited every time we see more of them and that they get to do something slightly different. And I don't even think I was computing what a great episode it was for Chris Redd until Thomas mentioned that. And that does make me really excited that we're seeing such different sides of him too.
Yeah. Bill, what about you? Anyone else that you would like to point out?
Yeah, I mean, I can just echo. I've mentioned his name like 10 times tonight, but Chris Redd really hit home with me. But I mean, again, 80 had such a great night as well. And if this is indeed her last 4 episodes, going out on top. So
great call. Thomas, what about you? Anyone in the cast that you would like to talk about?
I think Bowen Yang won the night for me, but it was actually a pretty decent showcase tonight the other night for Mikey Day. He was in a few sketches, but the Star Trek spinoff one wasn't necessarily my cup of tea. But they just let Mikey just chew a bunch of scenery and really like be at the forefront of that sketch. And I think Mikey. I enjoy most of his writing, and I think he's a pretty reliable, kind of under the radar performer as well. I enjoy Mikey Day, so I'll just give him a little shout out too.
For sure. And no, Cecily, I'm not even sure if she was in the building for this one. Melissa was there. I know she's preparing for the Independent Spirit Awards, but again, not in anything. I know she had mentioned on Instagram there was some stuff that she was in but got cut. So unfortunate not to see them. I would like to see more of them, especially Melissa, obviously, as we head towards the end of the season. But, we're talking about breakout people. And I have to say, after 17 episodes, we're saying who from this season is really standing out as breakout people. For me, to reiterate what we said, for me, it's Chris and Bowen. I love what we're seeing from Chris. This episode was a great Chris episode. The stuff we're seeing from Bowen is great. And then on the female side, it's Ego and Chloe. And I know this wasn't a big Chloe episode, but just the stuff we're seeing from Chloe, especially, the last few episodes, I really have enjoyed. So I'm happy to see that the SNL future is very bright. Speaking of the history of SNL and everything we're talking about, we did lose one of the original writers this past week, Ann Beats, and there was an obituary card that was put on After Update for Ann Beats. She was a writer from 1975 to 1980, one of the original female writers and a pioneer, really, in female comedy and comedy in general. And Bill, I know you wanted to mention something about Ann, so I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised by SNL and a little disappointed that they didn't do more. Whether that be, I know she wasn't a performer per se. She was in the background in some sketches back in the original 5. But to throw on 2 or 3 minutes of her greatest hits, I mean, she did The Nerds, she did Fred Garvin, Erwin Mainway. So all of these things are such cornerstones of the original era. And not only that, but what she went on to do, she created Square Pegs, probably the most underrated 80s show there is. And she did that before Linda Bloodworth Thompson and Susan Harris. And so she was a pioneer in every sense of the word, from writing to creating. And it's kind of a shame that all she got was a bumper card at the end of Update.
Yeah, to definitely see what you're saying. For me, I'm not always sure how it's going to continue to work. I think that we have precedent, obviously, losing some people, especially some cast members. You can think of emotional tributes that they've done over the few years that are really impactful with the long-term fan base. Obviously, as SNL continues to go on, you're going to lose people from the original years. And it is at least interesting to think about what is the right way to honor some of these people. And, they have put up cards for many people before. So, Bill, I get what you're saying. I just want to have an idea or an expectation about what they're going to do. And if SNL decides that, hey, like all these people who were the original cast, in the first 5 years, we're going to do something extra special for them, I'm okay with that too. I just want to, kind of get an idea of what SNL's perspective is on all of this stuff. Jillian, Thomas, anything you guys want to cover there, or should we move on?
I was just going to say, I was wondering if SNL maybe felt like they did honor her in a way, because the character that Tina Fey played in the Maya Ying sketch was maybe loosely based on her. So maybe SNL felt like there was sort of a tribute. Maybe they could have connected the dots a little bit more. I definitely see where Bill's coming from in that, but that immediately came to mind. Like, I wonder if they felt like they essentially maybe did a tribute to her a couple weeks back.
Jillian?
Yeah, well, I mean, that makes me kind of sad then, because in the Vulture interview that they had just run with her, they interviewed her a week before, and she said that she was kind of unhappy with that sketch, or that it, didn't quite honor her. So I hope that wasn't what they felt was their tribute. But I agree. I think when it's a writer, I mean, they didn't even really acknowledge at all who she was other than that image. And I think even if they had run their vintage SNL before that night had been highlights of her sketches or something, I think would have been really nice. Because I mean, I've been reading more and more about her in the SNL oral history book and the Vulture interview, and she's someone that I knew by name, but didn't know just how much she had done and what an impact she has had on the show and in comedy. And so I do feel like they kind of owe her more.
For sure. And I think that, look, not that these two things are related at all, but what I will say is that the privilege that I feel that we've had with SNL Stats this year and other podcasts in the community has been the opportunity to tell some of these stories, to speak to some of the alumni, and to hear things and talk to people who really, maybe haven't had an opportunity to tell the story of what the SNL experience was like for them back in the day. And I think that it is my goal, regardless of, who we may lose or not, it is my goal to tell these stories from people over the next few years as we continue to connect with some of the alumni. So even if SNL doesn't devote the time in their show to honor some of these people, speaking directly to our listeners, I'm going to try and do as much of that as possible as we continue to move forward with our show. So hopefully that'll be a nice thing to do, to honor some of the people who have really built what we all love. Let's move forward. Let's talk about what is coming up for the last 3 shows in May. So we don't have any official hosts yet. We are told that the show is coming back on May 8th. So we have those 3 shows starting on May 8th. Jillian, what are you looking forward to? Anything in your mind that you would like to see in the final 3 episodes?
I don't know. I guess I'm just so I really hope that if it's people's last season, that we find out about it, that it's not a Jason Sudeikis and some of these other people who after the fact are like, oh, by the way, I'm not coming back to SNL. I would love to see Jason Sudeikis come back to maybe host one of those 3 episodes. But I hope that if it truly is like Edie and Kate's last season, that makes me happy that they're doing kind of overload sketches together. I won't be quite as I'll be more excited, I guess, about it, that wow, we really went out with like Edie and Kate together with a bang. So I hope that we just get to see something from them, that Cecily comes back and really goes wild in the last couple episodes if it's her last season.
Bill, what about you? What are you looking forward to in our final 3?
Pretty much the same. I'd also like to see them bring back some of their original characters, ones that we haven't seen in a few years, maybe a girlfriend's talk show. I know we've seen the girl that you don't want to talk to at a party not too long ago, but it'd be nice, especially, and as Jillian said, that we know ahead of time. And I think that we will know that about most of them, only because a lot of them came back just because of the pandemic last year and not being able to do their proper farewell. So hopefully we'll get to see that. And I'd love to see some, alumni hosts. I'd love to see a Sudeikis or a Hader or, someone along that lines, or a Tom Hanks, and, close out with a bang.
Thomas, what about you?
Yeah, what immediately came to mind was the potential tributes to cast members that might be leaving after the season for sure. I also just want them to continue their silly, kind of goofy vibe that's been happening since mid-January. I want to see them have fun out there and take chances, and if they do political sketches, I want their points of view to really shine like it did with the cold open in this past episode. I just want to see that energy continue. That kind of started with that whole Nick Jonas episode, which everybody was just kind of delirious the entire time, and I actually liked that. It seemed like everybody was loose and having fun. So if they just continue that vibe over the next few episodes, I think I'll be a happy camper.
I think for me, it's, we started this season with the world obviously in the middle of a pandemic, and I know we're still in it, but really just confused about where we're going. When is this thing going to end? What is life going to be like? And SNL was a really calming presence. And we talked a lot about how after the new year, even Thomas brought it up tonight, how we've, felt like the politics stuff is behind us. There's a new president, and that we can move on to some fun and silly SNL and enjoy it. And now I feel like the general zeitgeist is we're on the road to recovery. We're moving forward. And I don't know when this whole thing is going to be over, but it's going to happen because things are starting to look like they're getting a bit better. And I think you see that general happiness in the cast, in the crew, in the episodes. And I'm really hoping that these last 3 episodes feel like the party that they're supposed to be, that we end the season on a high going into 47 and, whatever that brings. Really excited for that. And let this be a celebration, even if it's of 3, 4, 5. I don't know how many of these cast members are going to be moving it on, but let's celebrate these people who've been with the show for so many years, and let's move forward into that next era. So that's what I'm excited for moving forward. Jillian, let me ask you what's happening at Entertainment Weekly. I would like to thank you for joining us as always. I really appreciate hearing your perspective. Anything that you would like to plug?
Yeah, just I go to ew.com, follow, I know a friend of this podcast, Andy Hoglin's recaps for us every Saturday during the show, and follow me on social media at Jillian said.
Yeah, that guy's a pretty good writer. I think he's going to make it someday. So, yeah. Bill, always wonderful to hear your perspective. Where can people reach out to you?
You can find me on all the socials at BKLove73 and listen to my brilliant thoughts on Twitter. So,
yeah, always. Thomas, it was so much fun to hear from you. Yes, I really enjoyed. Oh, my pleasure. I enjoyed hearing your perspective, and I'm looking forward to you joining us again in the future. Where can people reach out to you?
You can reach out to me on Twitter, Thomas A. as an Apple, Sena, on Twitter. I like always meeting new SNL fans and everything. And I actually want to plug, it's a podcast hosted by a friend of this program, Jamie Dew, hosts the SNL Hall of Fame podcast. And I was actually fortunate enough to be a guest on that podcast too. So making my case for a musical guest, a host, and a cast member. So in February, I was on that episode talking about Nirvana and why they should be in the SNL Hall of Fame. And upcoming, I'll give a little tease. I'll be making my case for Emma Stone as a host, and I have the honor of making a case for Chris Farley as a cast member. So I don't know when those are going to air. He releases the episodes the 15th of every month. You can find it at SNL Hall of Fame wherever you listen to your podcast. But it's a great show and a great companion piece to this show and this whole SNL community that we got going on here.
Yeah. I was going to say, we know Kid Cudi is on board for 2 of those.
Right.
Yes, that's definitely for sure. And actually, Jamie's a great friend of the show. He's been on our show before, and I've been on it too. I've been on SNL Hall of Fame also. If you missed the one from March, I was there talking about Steve Martin, and I will be on at some point. I don't know when he's releasing the episodes or what the plan is, but I'll be there to talk about Taylor Swift at one point, and also Andy Samberg and the entire Lonely Island. So that'll be cool whenever he releases that. A great friend of the show. So thanks for pointing that out, Thomas. For everything that's happening on SNL Stats, let me just give you the rundown so you guys can catch up. I know there's a lot that we, every single week we put out a new episode. Last week, I had mentioned for the Daniel Kaluuya show, we had Gary Kroger, a cast member from the 1980s, on our show. It was so great to hear from Gary. It was one of my favorite shows that we've ever done because we got to hear stories about his time as a cast member and talk about how they compared to the show now. now. So that was really fun for us to have him on the show, and he'll be joining us again in the future, hopefully. We also went live on Saturday. Those are great shows. If you like hot takes, if you like interacting with the chat, you can rewatch the chat on YouTube. So those are really fun. Obviously, we have this roundtable that's coming out. And then over the next few weeks during our off weeks, we have our By the Numbers show. So if you are a stats and analytics geek, we have Mike Murray coming back to talk about all the stats from the last 3 episodes. So you get to see that. And then we have our Superfan Takeover. I'm not sure what the topics are yet, but we will do something fun with the Superfans coming up in a couple weeks. So lots of SNL coverage for you. So in case you miss anything, in case you're backed up and you're like, oh, I can't wait to hear about this, this, and this, you have your chance now. You have a few weeks to do that before we are back for our 3 shows in May. To never miss a show that we do, please follow us on Twitter or Instagram at SNL Stats. Make sure you never miss anything. And also subscribe to us on any podcatcher and on YouTube. That is the best way for anyone to find the show, is just give us a subscription. We really appreciate it. So for everyone here, for Jillian, for Bill, for Thomas, thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate it. Have a pleasant week ahead, and we'll see you next time, guys.
But we're here for the numbers as well. So let's get statistical, so unpredictable, here on SNL Stats.